Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of Deep Dive Live right here at the Voice of College Football. And this series is coming your way courtesy Tony Altamore, consultant strategist, friend of the channel, of course, and all that we do here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate Tony as he takes us through the run of teams that comprise our network here at the Voice of College Football. And we're taking a deep dive. And if you have yet to enjoy any of these, you're in for a treat. It's a real good landscape of what goes on in regards to what has been built there at the university in regards to culture, the academics, the rankings versus the rest of the teams and the schools of the Voice of College Football community, and of course the athletics and the football. Tony, thanks for being here. Of course, Tony, I think you're muted.
I was sorry about that. I said, go Hawkeyes.
That's right. Go Hawkeyes. We're going to celebrate Iowa football and athletics and celebrate the school as well over the next 60 minutes or so. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. And again, keep in mind that we've done this for a number of schools, including Michigan, USC, Florida State, and others. So check out those deep dives because I think you will enjoy it, because most do. They really come in and say, hey, this was an eye-opener. This really provided a lot of insight and information into what college athletics are all about and adding up the metrics. So, Tony, I will let you take it from here and I will monitor the chat. And again, folks, comments and questions are welcome.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, hey, let's get as we get started here talking about Iowa. I'll tell you, Iowa is very much like a quintessential Big Ten school. Like it is a great school. It is the state flagship school of its state. I mean, for example, at Iowa, they estimate half of the doctors in the state of Iowa come from the University of Iowa. Something like 80% of the dentists in the state of Iowa come from the University of Iowa. Like this, the campus has the old state capitol building as part of it. So it very much is the quintessential flagship school of a great Big Ten state. And it's a great school. One of the things is we look at these numbers, the Big Ten is full of amazing schools. So if you see anything from Iowa, you think, oh, well, that doesn't look very good. It actually is outstanding. It's just in a world of other outstanding schools too. So as we dig in, we're going to look tonight at 4 different aspects of Iowa. So we're going to look at it as a school and kind of talk about some real basics of the university itself. We'll look at its academics. We'll dig into the athletic department, and then we'll wrap up with what everybody loves the most, how Iowa compares in football. And for this deep dive series, we're putting them together for each of the schools in Mark's Voice of College Football community. So each one of these schools is a Voice of College Football community school, and they each have their own channel. So we're working with each of these channels. And part of this that I think is really interesting, which is a bit different, is that we're going to show a lot of comparisons just against these schools. And what that means is that you're looking just really at how Iowa compares against these kind of elite blue bloods in all these different metrics. We'll also show some stuff how they compare with the rest of the Big Ten. But in general, again, we're looking at comparing Iowa with all of these kind of elite blue bloods here. So first of all, and this is kind of a side thing we recently did. We were wondering, does money buy championships? How does schools combine their spending versus their success? So this looked at 2 years of sports success, and you can see Iowa is pretty good. Your spending is not as high as some other people. Your success is pretty good. Maybe could be a little better compared to Georgia and North Carolina and NC State and Cal, but overall your sports do pretty well. And I want to we always love to also start with this kind of really interesting look. So this compares all of the schools athletically and how they have success in sports versus academics. So as you go from left to right on the side, you'll see that's academic rank, and that's a 3-way average of the 3 kind of most respected rankings together. And then we standardize the universe to be average rank among FBS and AAU schools. We'll get more into that in a minute. And then sports success going up and down. So the schools in the top right are schools that are outstanding at sports and academics. The schools on the very bottom left struggle a little more at both. So what do we find in this? Well, we find there are about 4 separate spacings here, and one has no teams. The first is really the Power 5 schools. They have, mid to very strong academics and mid to very strong sports. And then kind of way in that corner, you have sort of your elite Ivy schools and your service academies with, great academics and kind of middling to okay sports. And then you see the G5. And the G5, they're, kind of mid to weaker academics and weak sports. What you'll notice is no G5s are really successful in sports across the enterprise. So that's 2 years of Director's Cup points. So one of the really interesting distinctions, and a lot of this has to do with resources and stuff, is that the power conference schools are the ones who win across most sports. Again, you also have some of the, like the Ivy League schools do really well as well, but the G5, none of them really creep up, which is kind of interesting. But one of the things you'll notice is there are no bad schools, no even weak schools that are really great at sports. So when we look at the Power 5 conference schools, all of them are really good schools, and almost all of them succeed, fairly well at sports. So where does Iowa fit into that? Well, this sort of breaks in the Power 5 versus the G5. And you see Iowa's kind of in the middle of the Power 5, I think, on both. Again, great school, great athletic department. Not quite doing what Ohio State's doing, but pretty solid. And there they are. This is kind of labeled. So if you guys want to pause it while you're watching a playback later or whatever, you can see where they compare to different folks. And let's look at Iowa here in the Power 5. So you see, Iowa really kind of sits. You used to sit in the middle of the Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12 line. Now I would say you sit in the middle of the Big 12, ACC, Big Ten line, because you're right very similar to Kansas, Utah, Colorado, Arizona State, Penn State. Kind of right there in the middle of really good school, solid in sports, but you. Certainly a little more room for the Hawks to do some more things there. Now, why do we look at this? Why does all this matter? Well, when you guys hear us talk about financials of sports, you hear like the Big 12 is always talking about their $30 million. They're obsessed with their $30 million. Did you know that the Big 10, and this number actually changed this week, the Big 10 does about 17 or 18 or something now, I guess with Washington, maybe even 19 billion dollars a year in academic research. 19 billion, not 30 million. The joke in the Big Ten is always, I've always heard, was the B in big stands for billions. And so part of the reason that we look at these academic numbers is we want to give you guys a sense of what Iowa is really doing. What makes them this flagship school. And it's what they're doing as a university that is just absolutely remarkable. And that's true of almost all the Power 5 schools, but it's especially true of the Big Ten. The Big Ten is absolutely unmatched in what it does academically, other than maybe the Ivy League, but actually in a lot of metrics, the Big Ten outdoes the Ivy League, especially with money. And so, in that regard, Iowa is in an outstanding group of schools that have helped it grow into what it is today. All the great thing. What's the difference between Iowa and Mississippi and Ole Miss? You could argue that, well, Iowa was part of the Big Ten, and the Big Ten helped Iowa kind of nurture to there. One caveat I'll give you guys is that we set these up last week before the PAC's implosion, so not all the numbers are settled because we have to figure out where we're going to put Stanford and Cal. So and they have some big numbers. So where you see the little stamp on there, pre-PAC implosion, those are, a week old numbers. All right, so let's look at the university as a whole. Let's look at Iowa. So like we said, Iowa, quintessential Big Ten school. That is the old Iowa State Capitol building. One funny thing, Iowa and Michigan both have state capitol buildings. Iowa has the old one from before they moved the capital to Des Moines. And Michigan has the failed one that Ann Arbor built as part of their bid to host the state capitol that they didn't win. So Iowa and Michigan both have Capitol buildings. But yeah, beautiful campus, kind of a mixture of old and new. I mean, Iowa, neat place. They invented the Masters of Fine Arts degree at Iowa. They, have the Iowa Writers Workshop. Tennessee Williams went there. They've got 46 Pulitzer Prize winners. I mean, this is a serious school. And all the Big Ten schools are serious because, and now this number again went up this week, but the Big Ten probably has, I guess, now almost, getting closer to 900,000 students enrolled at Big Ten schools. And so we just added some more. So let's take a look at Iowa and what makes them Iowa. So as we know, Iowa is a public school. Now, you guys are a state flagship school. You are not a land grant school. Iowa State is the land grant school of Iowa, but you are the state flagship school. So that, those are the two common definitions that people sometimes mix up. You are an AAU member. Now, the AAU is the Association of American Universities. That is the super elite club of research schools that everybody wants to be a member of. It is financially very lucrative to your school. It's the ultimate badge of honor, helps you recruit faculty, which then helps improve your rankings, helps improve your students. So it is the ultimate thing. In Iowa, I don't know if you were a founding member. I don't remember exactly when you joined, but you've been a member forever. You're an elite research school. The other number that you'll always also hear is the Carnegie classification. This is a thing invented by the former president of Cal. Usually universities are R1, R2, R3, or M1, M2, or some of the bachelor's categories. R means it's a research school. R1 is the most elite designation of that. What's interesting here, if you look at our Voice of College Football community, again, these are the football blue bloods. Every single one of these football blue bloods that this community focuses on are an R1 school. So that kind of goes along with the idea that, all of the football universities are very, very, very serious academic institutions. I mean, that's as high as you can get. Let's look at population. So you guys, Iowa City's fairly small. One of the smallest in the blue blood areas. You've only got 573,000 people in about a 50-mile range. Your core budget, a lot of your stuff here you'll see is very middle of these elite blue bloods. Now you're one of the best schools in the country, but of these blue bloods, a lot of your numbers you'll see here kind of in the middle. So you've got $1.4 billion budget. So again, football, remember we talk about football being 50, 60 million, whatever. Your school is running a $1.4 billion core budget, which is $45,000 per student. Now, I was one of the kind of a mid-range school. You're not real big for the Big Ten. You're pretty small, but for other schools, you're not. So you've got 21,000 undergrads, 29,000 overall. That's 72% undergrad, which is quite high for like a Big Ten school. USC is 42%, for example. Michigan is 64. You're 72. Applications, you get about 22,000 applications. 86% admissions rate. That may seem high if you're comparing it to like Northwestern or UCLA or whatever. But given that the point of Iowa and Iowa State is to educate the students of the state, and you don't have a million schools in the state, so that's not really something to stress about too much. Your yield rate is a little low, so it's only of the accepted students, only 23% of them go. But the price of the school, and this is really a neat thing about Iowa, Iowa's a really affordable school. So your in-state tuition is only $26,000, your out-of-state tuition is only $43,000, and the average actual U.S. student there is only paying $17,000. So it's compared to a lot of these other schools. I mean, Miami's $35,000, so the sticker price is $75,000. So compared to a lot of these schools, Iowa's pretty affordable. So that is Iowa as a school. What do you think, Mark? Not a bad place.
Not at all. Not at all. They should be proud of a lot of these numbers, and certainly competitive in the nation's best athletic conference, and competitive from an academic standpoint in one of the nation's best academic conferences, probably second to the Ivy League. So how much, and this is an extremely general question, but how much, are these numbers reviewed by the administration at these schools? And, how much are they really wanting to be in a certain echelon versus understanding what is practical and what really fits that particular school?
So it depends on the school. In general, there are some numbers that they always want to try to improve. You always want to push your admissions rate down and your yield rate up. So, for example, I bet the Iowa's president doesn't really like that they have an 86% admissions rate and only 23% of the students that apply go. So, a lot of people are applying to Iowa and planning to go somewhere else. But at the same time, their mission is to serve the state. And so that may not bug them as much. A school like Northwestern is just going to really fight tooth and nail to get that down. A school like Utah, Utah is another great example of this. Utah is a great school. They've got about the same statistics you do, but they're there for a mission. So a mission of purpose, not a literal mission. So they're always trying to improve them, but you have less pressure. Depends on your state. One of the big things that's coming as we look at these numbers is there is going to be an enrollment cliff. And Mark, I think we've talked about this a little bit. During the 2008 recession, a lot of people stopped having babies. Times were bad. People were laid off. People are planning families, put it off or whatever. And so the U.S. birth rate really, not plunged, but took a pretty hefty dive. And what that means is that starting in the next year or two, a whole lot of babies who weren't born aren't going to college. And so a lot of these schools that rely very, very heavily on students, lots of students coming in or being backup schools or stuff like that may really suffer. So because Iowa's only a 23% yield rate, so they may start to stress out. They might start doing some budget cuts, cutting programs, shuttering dorms, stuff like that, to be prepared for an era when there are fewer kids going to college in the next couple of years. I don't know if you guys heard, like Iowa Wesleyan just closed the school. You're going to see a lot more of that too. Because also, by the way, making this worse, in addition to having way fewer kids, technology has allowed schools to be able to serve way more kids. So, for example, USC is, 45% bigger than it was when I was there. So, they're like, okay, well, if more of these classes are online, if we have, one of every 3 classes is online, then we can add many more kids. And so a lot of it turns into a little bit of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And that's why we're starting to see some schools go out of business.
I'm going to throw an AAU question at you that, again, I don't want to pin you down on this because this is a difficult one. Roughly how old is the AAU to begin with?
Founded like 1900, 1902, something like that. Okay,
so it slightly predates the Big
about
Ten.
The same age as the Big Ten.
I'm sorry, what?
It's about the same age as the Big Ten.
Yeah. So based on what do you know, when the Big Ten Conference was formed, was that not necessarily a prerequisite, but was that a factor in determining what schools would be in the Big Ten, or were there schools that entered the Big Ten after the Big Ten was formed that they made that a requirement, or did the chicken come before the egg, or vice versa? Do you have any idea?
I think they kind of went in parallel. This again, and there's probably a Big Ten historian who's going to angrily type in the comments, listen to whatever he says. My impression is that it probably, or this is my guess, I shouldn't say an impression, my guess is it probably went in kind of parallel tracks, because at first the AAU was really just the elite research schools like Michigan and Chicago, Big Ten members, Michigan and Chicago, and the Ivy League schools, not even all the Ivy League schools. And, and sports was more of a student organization and everything until about World War II. And I think as we came out of World War II, I would guess that's when the Big Ten, and the Big Ten was always wanting schools that really were AAU schools. But it wasn't as much like a check mark. It was kind of like, oh, we're all the same. We all have the same values. We all have the same like-minded stuff. This is kind of a designation that indicates, who we're after. So Michigan State, for example, joined the Big Ten, and 10 years later joined the AAU. Because by about the 50s, 60s, the AAU grew a lot in the 50s and 60s, as all of higher education with the GI Bill and students coming in changed a lot. And so as a result, what you start to see is, I think, more of that alignment to what we think of today as those schools and the AAU. Because the other thing is, if you go back, like before World War II, and this, I don't want to bore you guys forever on this, but if you go back before World War II, all college was very elite. So, for example, this is going to sound silly, but there wasn't that much difference between like Harvard and Iowa. And then, of course, World War II, and more people started going to college, and we started to get more stratification. Because it used to be like, if you went to a college, and that was wild. That was elite. That was, you were a doctor or a lawyer. And now that more people do, and which is exactly what we want. It's why the Land Grant Act took off, and the ag schools took off, and Michigan State built itself into a mothership, and Iowa State built up, and all that. And so that kind of stuff evolved a little bit like that. Thank you, Doc P. I appreciate it. That's kind of you to say.
Absolutely.
Should we take a look at the academics?
Let's get to it, Tony.
All right, so real quick, Big Ten is just in another world in a lot of things. So you take a look, again, these are pre-pack implosion. Big Ten does more research per school than the Ivy League. Big Ten, everybody except Nebraska in the Big Ten is a member of the AAU. Nebraska they had a weird political fight. It's a whole big Real Housewives style drama. But Nebraska is no longer in the AAU. They got kicked out. As have Iowa State. So Iowa State is no longer in the AAU, as did Syracuse, Catholic, Union College or somebody. I forget which one it was. One of those New York colleges, and a couple others over time. Because again, over 100 years, it changed a lot. Average endowment per school. Big Ten schools have huge endowments. They are the Big Ten is the second best academic ranking of Division I schools behind the Ivy League. I think that actually improved now with Washington. And then the Big 12 has also had great improvement. If you look across most metrics, the Big 12 has now added its 4 best schools in the past week. So go Big 12. So again, we talk about state flagship schools. Those are like the school that usually has like the med school and the law school and all that. You guys are one of them. There's about 52 state flagship schools. The Big Ten and the SEC have more than half. So the Big Ten has 14 state flagship schools. So, these are the schools that matter in the Big Ten region. And of course, you guys are one of them. The land grant schools, and again, state flagship and land grant have very clear definitions. Iowa State is Iowa's land grant school. Remember that the University of Iowa was actually a school before they passed the Land Grant Act. So you're not a land grant school because you're already there. So they built Iowa State. So let's take a look at academics here at Iowa. And let's take a look at how you compare to the rest of the Big Ten before we get to the elite stuff or the blue blood stuff. So academic rank, this is that 3-way average that we calculated here for these deep dives. In the Big Ten, this shows you with your new Big Ten partners as well. So this is updated for last week. You are right between Penn State and Oregon. So, you can look at that and you can say, okay, well, that's fairly far down. But again, the Big Ten schools are all outstanding. Research spending, you guys do $554 million a year. And you can look at that and say, okay, well, we were second to last in the Big Ten until last week. But I'll tell you, at second to last in the Big Ten, you're actually higher than anybody that was in the Big 12 until last week. So go Iowa. AP times ranked, you're right between Wisconsin and Oregon. And then your all sports points, we'll get to more athletics in a little bit. All sports points, you're right between Maryland and Michigan State. So great school in great company. Let's look here at your academics. So these are red to green, and they are just among this voice of college football community blue bloods here. So if you look at it and you're like, we're red, well, compared to the rest of the world, you're all green. But this is just compared to the voice of college football community. So the first one we have, kind of looks, one of the big things looks at status, AAU members, flagships are top 50. Green is for multiple. You guys are both. You're at that average rank we talked about. You're number 72, pretty good. Admissions rate, we already hit that. So these are your ranks in the different rankings. So US News, you're 83. Shanghai, which looks at a lot more like research and stuff, you're 47, which is really good. Wall Street Journal and Times Higher Education puts you at 141 based on their criteria. I'm sorry, that was Penn State, 169. Forbes, 137. Your faculty, this is actually pretty sweet. So Washington Monthly calculates a faculty ranking based on all kinds of factors like members of national academies and stuff like that. Here's number 47, which is one of the best in major football here. Research, number 62, really good. Again, we said $500 million in research. You have a $3.1 billion endowment. It's great. It's a lot of money. So what that means is that's sort of like, like a 401k for the college that helps fund it over time. So you guys have lots of resources to help protect you from, shifts in state funding. Your annual fundraising is a couple years old. You're probably higher now, but I don't have the new data for that. $225 million a year in fundraising. So President Wilson's out there fundraising her butt off, again, bringing in $200 million a year in donations. And a lot of that, I would guess, we talk about this, athletics as the front porch of the university. These people are giving money to your med school, they're giving money to your law school, but I would guess they are being entertained at Hawkeye football and basketball games. There's parties and donors and mingling and all that, which is a big thing. Something you're really good at, you guys have had 20 Rhodes Scholars. It's great. Your social mobility ranking, which is a really interesting ranking Washington Monthly puts together. That looks at like how do you help kids like from disadvantaged backgrounds like do better in life. Really good, ranked 135. And you have a 73% graduation rate, which is a little low, but not bad. So overall, just like a great school.
Yeah. Definitely a strong showing across the board. And again, just to emphasize what Tony delivers all the time in regards to these, especially when we go to a Big Ten school, just understand roughly number 53 ranking is the average ranking of schools in America from the Big Ten out of, again, like 13,000 schools of some sort of higher learning. And then was it 3,500 colleges and universities?
Yeah, about like 1,300 that we would consider like real colleges and universities. And then what we've done here for this, so yeah, about 1,300 that we consider real colleges and universities. What we've done for this is we took the AAU and the FBS, which is I think the best of the best. If you're gonna get down to like, we'll pick on Boise, right? Because I have huge respect for Boise, but we know they have a different mission from a lot of other people. So get down to Boise and, maybe they're mixing with like Cal State LA or whatever. So you can have some debates, but you guys are in the stratified air, and in that stratified air of the best schools in the world, we think you're about, 72 on the average of these rankings, which is outstanding. Again, number one is, I don't know, Harvard. I should know this actually. It's like Harvard or Princeton or somebody. I think Stanford is number 3. So you are in very, very rarefied elite air.
Top 5 to 6%. If you look at 1,300, top 130 would be top 10%. So they're in that top 5 to 6%.
Yeah. Well, and the state flagship schools, even if they're not as highly ranked, they really matter in that state. So it's a huge thing, and it's a very special designation. So this kind of shows you where you are kind of in relative to conferences. So you guys can see, you'd be one of the highest in the Big 12 or the SEC. You're kind of there in the Big 10, ahead of Oregon and Nebraska. But you look at compared to the other conferences, and these are updated. You would have been better than any Big 10, any Big 12 up until last Friday. We should have done this a week ago. Again, your admissions rate, it's a little easier to get in than some other schools, but it's not like wildly so. Your faculty accolades. This is quality of your faculty, ranked by Washington Monthly. You guys see here, you are right in the middle of the Big Ten. So what this says to me is that Iowa does like a great job with their actual faculty and students. Like you guys have really, really great faculty on that campus, it looks like from here. So that, and you must work really hard to retain them, because for you to be like a little bit further down in some of the rankings, but really higher on this one, says a lot about the faculty at the University of Iowa. So I give them huge credit for that. This is not updated, but this kind of shows the Big Ten's research spend. Again, before the Pac-12 started shifting everybody around, but the Big Ten got higher. But you can see you're further on the end, but your bar is still bigger than anybody in the Big 12 at this time, up until last week. So again, great research university, great med school. Well, the med school is where the hospital is that the kids all wave at and all that. So that where's that $500 million a year going? It's going to help research to help those kids. You get your research ranking lower in the Big Ten. This is based on like output of research, but also again elite compared to the SEC and Big 12. So always really good. Fundraising, annual giving. You're a little lower on the Big Ten end, but you're still, like we said, raising about $250 million a year to fund the school, which is great. So that is the academics. Should we get on to what they want?
This is what they want to hear.
Iowa's athletic department. So let's take a look at how you guys do overall. So like we said, you're all sports points. You guys are always really good at wrestling and a couple of other things. Your all sports points are a little bit lower than some. So your 9, this was sort of a 2-year calculation, and also it was before the end of the spring season. So we should re-update that with the 2 years. But you were at 901, again, lower than most of these blue bloods, but better than, who were you better than? Better than Clemson and West Virginia among the blue bloods. One thing you haven't really done a lot of is win national championships. So you have one in the big 3 sports of football, basketball, and baseball, which I think is like football, I don't know, 1958 or something?
Yep.
No basketball or baseball. You have 26 overall national championships. I think that's heavy in wrestling, if I remember.
Oh, yeah.
10 Olympic medals. So number of teams, and this is always a source of debate, but this is using an official measurement the NCAA uses as like number of head coaches. Because like sometimes like they'll count spring, indoor track differently from outdoor track or whatever, but it's all one track team. So you have officially 17 teams. Now I understand during COVID, you guys cut 3 sports at Iowa. I understand they got rid of men's gymnastics, men's swimming, which was sad because a friend of mine was a swimmer there, and men's tennis. So your number of sports is down, your number of athletes are down, but you still do have 640 athletes, which is a lot. And that's a lot more than a lot of these other schools. So there's a lot of athletes at the University of Iowa. Your department budget is $124 million. Again, that's low, 126 million, low for the Big Ten, but again, really high overall. You spend about $49 million on football, which is not that high, but again, also not that low. $10 million on basketball. You spend $29 million on Olympic sports. Now we have another calculation, 2 other calculations we have. Walk-on value, where we try to estimate how much your walk-ons contribute. Remember, walk-ons pay to go to school, but that payment is sort of like, it's almost like free money to the athletic department because they get you without having to pay for a scholarship. It's like your parents are almost donating your scholarship. So you get about 23 million bonus of that. I mean, it really is, because remember, scholarships are paid by donors and then they pay the school for that. So essentially, if you're a walk-on, your parents are the donors of your scholarship, or whoever else is paying for you. But the other number that we calculate here, and this is a very special thing that I've calculated for some stuff, and we've recalculated here for this series, which is this cash flow profit of football and men's basketball that we estimate. And I've talked to some ADs about this. They think it's a fascinating number, but we try to estimate how much profit football and basketball are throwing off to fund the rest of the athletic department. And so on that, we get you guys, it looks like, are about 78 million, which is a lot. So your athletic department gets about $78 million in profits from football and men's basketball to fund the rest of everything. And how does that compare? Well, that's again in the whole world of stuff, that's really good. Florida State is only about 50. That's why they're complaining. Virginia Tech is only about 36. Ohio State, on the other hand, is at 137 million. So, again, the hard thing for Iowa is that you are running with the big dogs. And you succeed. I mean, you're playing in the Big Ten championship this year. So, that's awesome. You've been to the College World Series once. You've been to 3 Final Fours. Your basketball team, pretty decent. You were ranked 35 last year in KenPom. And then your KenPom 10-year points are, again, fairly middle among the Blue Bloods, which is a pretty good place to be, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of yellow there. There's a lot of neutrality, again, among the Blue Bloods. So it's a good place to be. It's a strong place to be.
Very strong. Because again, guys, if we put this up for all of college football, this entire section would just be a wall of green. Well, except for Virginia Tech's 0 national championships.
Yeah, they got to work on that. Yeah, they need to pump their money into a particular sport. I don't know if it's fencing or something, just to get a national championship.
Just to get that off the record. Yeah, it's like you got to knock it off. Well, I almost said a really inappropriate analogy. Sorry. Yeah, just knock it off, guys. Get it done. Get it done. So taking a look at that, here, this is an interesting one. We looked at what do AAU members spend on sports, which I thought was kind of interesting. And they range from Caltech is $3 million to Ohio State's 186. And, you're 115 again, right? You're on hanging with the big dogs, right where you should be. But I thought that's kind of a fun thing to take a look at. So you're pretty solid. We said you have like 640 athletes, I think.
Yeah.
So Big Ten average is 675. Big Ten athletic departments are the second biggest on average in all of college sports, second only to the Ivy League, who have huge athletic departments. So again, you're hanging with the big dogs. Absolutely. So we said, what was your, did we look at subsidy? I should have looked at your subsidy. I'm sorry, guys. But Big Ten schools don't have to subsidize their sports because they're profitable. So, Big Ten and SEC schools, some of them subsidize a lot of this. It's like Rutgers and I think Vandy and Mississippi State or somebody that weigh these down. But a lot of the Big Ten schools are profitable. They're in the black, especially if you offset the subsidy impact. So, Iowa, you guys are, like we said, you're making a lot of money and you don't have to subsidize, at least not very much. Average athletic department budget, like we said, you're very average for the Big Ten academic budget. I think yours was, what did we say, 125 million or something?
Yeah, I think it was 115.
Plus about 20 million of walk-ons we estimated. So this takes a look at what, if you include those walk-ons, what would they be? Average Big Ten is 175. Let me just quick scroll up and it'll just tell us because I should know that. I should have memorized. Yeah, 115 plus 20 some walk-ons. Yeah, 25, 135 or something is your number. Average Big Ten here is 175. Ohio State weighs that a little heavy. But, again, really solid spending. Olympic sports budget, here's the Big Ten. You're right in the middle of the Big Ten as far as spending on Olympic sports at $29 million. That $29 million, it would make you, third from the highest in the Big 12? So again, you guys care a lot about sports. You care about Olympic sports. You're just, not as much as some of the other Big Tens. And then this was looking at all sports. That all sports number. Your all sports number is a little low. And I don't know, guys. Anybody in the chat, let me know. I don't know if this was like the last couple of years. If you've had some sports that are down, like I don't know, like wrestling was bad and track was bad or something like that. Like why your all sports numbers are a little lower than I would have thought. But again, pretty solid. Again, we set your right average Big Ten profitability, right where you want to be. You're not one of the most profitable. So, you are. I'm sorry. You're there. This is you. 78. So you're right there. you're not on the edge, but you are right there. So you're right between, USC and Nebraska profitability wise, which is, yeah, when you're right between USC and Nebraska, you're doing fine. The problem is just you guys are used to staring at Ohio State and Michigan. And what's the joke when you're not the lead dog, the view's always the same. So you guys are in very, very rarefied air. Recruiting expense, you don't spend as much on recruiting. I don't know if that's maybe because Iowa State is like a cheaper place, so you don't have to put people like the Four Seasons in Austin like they do with Arch Manning and all that or whatever. But Big Ten schools spend a lot on recruiting. So, all right, are we ready for some football?
We are ready for football. Got one question about the men's basketball / football revenue number.
The profitability number.
Yeah, the profitability number. So is the TV revenue that is so much ballyhooed and talked about among myself and people that do this, that gain so much discussion, is that involved in that number?
Yeah. So this basically attempts to estimate and account for all of the revenue generated by football and basketball, which essentially all of the conference money, which includes the TV money. The conference gets money from TV. They get money from the NCAA. They get money from sponsorships. They get some ticket sales money. All that comes in, and then the conference takes out the cost of running the conference. And again, this whole like Big 12, like 31 points, all that. That's not even counting the cost of running the conference, guys. So like that lavish media days that they threw with, all they brought, I don't know, bands and cheerleaders and mascots, and they rented out like all that costs money. So you forget, like, it's not just about top line, it's about bottom line. So this is taking that conference bottom line. It's taking, the school sponsorship money, the school's revenue money. There's some kind of estimates we had to do. We found something that we think, talking to some ADs, is kind of offsetting for to offset the cost of I don't know, wrestling tickets or whatever. But in general, those Olympic sports make almost nothing. And what they cost to run is often more than what they make in any kind of ticket sales. Again, some weird exceptions, right? Like, I don't know, Colorado College hockey. They're Division III and everything except Division I in hockey, and their hockey team makes money, but essentially nobody else's does. So what this does, it tries to think about how much of that, and then it takes about half of your unallocated expenses, right? So your department, they've got your athletic department's got its SID, they've got academic support, all this. When we've talked to schools, they have kind of liked that idea that they say, yeah, if we were just football and basketball, it's about half. We would only need half the SIDs. We would only need half the, nutritionists, whatever you've got. And so we put all that together, and it tries to estimate, again, if you were going to separate football and basketball from the rest of the athletic department, how much money would they be giving to fund it?
Yeah, and just to go along with that, on the ground kind of example was when I was covering Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama on a daily basis for 7 years. Yeah, if you're going in during the time I was there, their tennis programs in particular were top 5 in the nation at all 3 schools. They had a lot of outstanding programs. Softball was just really amping up in the late 90s, and they were all really good. But, you would have a tennis contact. You would have a softball contact. Football, all hands on deck. Everybody in the office is at the foot. They're all involved in everything football. Everybody's needed. Men's basketball, to a certain degree, was pretty much the same deal, especially once they got into conference play. Absolutely.
Exactly. So there, and it kind of varies. It's because you can kind of think about what would you do and how would you handle it. And every school is gonna be a little different. There's some schools. LSU probably turns a profit on baseball because they bring in so many people. But, a lot of these schools we get 2,000 people. Do you know what it actually costs to open the stadium and run the concessions and all? It's so a lot of this stuff is really unlikely to break even. The other thing is there's a whole lot of money that the schools make that doesn't count. So, for example, bookstore sales, merchandising sales, all that is huge. Parking. a lot of schools don't get the parking revenue. The parking revenue goes to the parking department, even though it's for sports. So there, when you think about, okay, well, they made money in baseball. It's like, oh, well, but also football parking that you're not counting the money for is way more than the baseball money. So there's a lot of kind of offsetting things in these calculations. And again, there's some, some schools all have something kind of weird. But the other thing, guys, is that a lot of the stuff costs way more to open up than you'd think. Like just opening the doors costs a bunch of money. So, yeah. So should we take a look at football?
Yeah.
Go Hawkeyes.
Hawkeye fans looking for a Big Ten Western Division championship this year.
Now, as a Michigan native, Hawkeye football fears me, or it causes fear in me, because I know that no matter how your season is going, you go into Kinnick Stadium on a Saturday night and bad things happen. It's sort of like I described to my USC friends. They say it's like the Corvallis of the Big Ten. Like bad things happen there, no matter how good you think you are. And so I fear a little bit when my Trojans go to Kinnick for the first time. So again, this is comparing you guys to the absolute Mike Fort. Is it just me, or does the hot dog cannon sound absolutely awesome? Yes, I think it is absolutely awesome. But I'm also told they're more powerful than like we think they are. So again, this is comparing you guys to the bluest of the blue bloods. And so you've got some red on here, but I think it's okay to say, okay, well, we have not won as much as Alabama or Ohio State at Iowa. So again, this is just against the blue bloods. So Kyle Umlong, who's a great guy, does this thing called Blue Blood Rank. He calculates all these different things, puts you at number 24 overall throughout your history. And Winsipedia, which does the same thing, puts you at 23. And that's really good. You got one national championship. That is less than Alabama. One Heisman winner. Who was their Heisman winner?
Their Heisman winner would have been either, I think it's Niall Kinnick. Unless
it is. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Can we edit that? Is it too late? We're live. Shoot.
Okay.
That was
Tony,
embarrassing.
You can't know everything, and you
would have
come up with that quickly. Chuck Long finished number 2 to Bo Jackson, by the way, in 1985, in the closest Heisman vote ever.
Barbara's asking, when you look at, so Barbara, we already did women's sports on the last one with national championships. So this is just football. We did when we looked at the athletic department, we looked at all sports. And when we get back to that, there's another screen. Barbara, remind me. We'll look at what that was again. So again, one national championship. You have 11 weeks at AP number 1, 357 weeks ranked all time, which is low for on here, but also really high for everybody else. Since 2000, 189. Your TV ratings, again, a little bit lower on here, but again, high for everybody else. Fan base rate, we did a fan base study. You got about like 2 million, compared to some other people. All-time winning percentage, 54. That's a little low. But I think that Iowa was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Iowa fans, tell me if I'm wrong on this, because I need to take a look at this. But you have been better in like the last 40 years than you were like back in your history.
Tony, when I saw that just bold red just hit me in the face as soon as you pulled up that chart, I thought 54% in the 60s and 70s were not kind to Iowa. Like they were really bad. And then Hayden Fry took over some really bad.
And they got really good
by about year 3 or 4 of Hayden Fry. And ever since they've been, I would say in the top 15 range, 15 to 18 in the last 40 years.
That's what I thought. I was just looking at that. I was like, how are you so low in winning percent? But yeah, it could be from a long time ago. Okay, that's what it is. Because your winning since then is really good. You got 13 conference championships, which is really good. Overall, again, these are orange, but you're orange among the blue bloods, which is a pretty good place to be. 26 NFL first-round draft picks, 31 consensus All-Americans. You've had 272 overall draft picks, which is great. Like we said, you're spending $49 million on football, and you're making a profit after that of about $78 million to fund the rest of the athletic department. So That's pretty stellar. Go Iowa.
Tony,
Anything stand
19
out?
consecutive non-winning seasons in the 60s and 70s.
I
19 straight.
I apologize because my father definitely contributed to 4 of them. Go Spartans. Go green, go white. Yeah, okay, that explains why you're there. But yeah, so if we should have done something like that, like 2000, since 2000 or since 1985 or something like that. But one of the things here is we talk about the Big Ten, because I think that this really relates to you guys from Iowa. We have really gotten to a world, as much as we talk about the Power 2, it's really kind of a Power 3. There's the SEC and the Big Ten, and now then the ACC. So this is looking at national championships. Guys, look at how concentrated national championships have been. This is 1950 to present. And you see, there's the one BYU and the one Colorado. And other than that, every single one of them is Big Ten or SEC. It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 lost their 2.
Well, all this movement in the last few weeks has sent you scrambling. These charts have probably gotten more fluctuation in the last 2-3 weeks than they have in years.
They have. And do you like the do you like the logo on this one? The Pac-4?
Oh, there it is. Yes.
There it is. We got the Pac-4 logo.
Oh my.
This one is up to date. It might be out of date by tomorrow. We'll see. As we look more recent, I think it's interesting to look more recent. As we look 1985, okay, the math is good on this one. We should check in. So as we look at 1985, excuse me, 1985 to present, you really see it's not just consolidated in the teams or in the conferences. It's consolidated in the teams. So this is every national champion since 1985. And look at how few of them there are. I say this, Mark has seen this slide before, so he's not surprised. But to you guys, look at how few there are. Mark's like, I know. You showed it to me a month ago. But you really see, the ACC, it's those 5 teams. And guys, we usually count Notre Dame in the ACC. As you heard, Notre Dame is a full voting member of the ACC. Because the reason I do that in a lot of these, some people get fussy, is because Notre Dame is plays half their schedule in the ACC. They are a full member of the ACC. I tend to lump them in because again, they're playing a lot of those ACC teams, even if it's not all of them.
Yeah, we were just reminded of that, of course, Tony, just here in the last few days, and looking at some of these board votes from athletic directors and from school presidents in the ACC, that they are one of the 15 voting members with a full vote.
Exactly. So here's weeks ranked in the AC. Oh, I need to update this. Ignore the heading. Sorry, guys. There's been lots of updates in the last week on these, but this is, again, weeks ranked. Again, you looked at that. It didn't look real good when you were with the Blue Bloods, but look at you guys overall. You're better than anybody in the Big 12. You're better than anybody in the Pac-4. Oh, I forgot to update this one to Pac-4. You're among the best in the ACC, again, kind of lower middle of the SEC, and better than a lot of these G5s. So again, Iowa, outstanding football, but usually in a world of elite folks. And as we take a look, one of the other things here, so this isn't really related to you guys, but the Big Ten has done this amazing NFL style scheduling now, where your games are going to be on CBS, Fox, NBC, and then Big Ten Network and FS1 for the lower ones. But these are, average rankings by channel. And what you see is when you're on those big channels, the reason you guys get that big money is because so many people watch those channels. It's really a TV product. So, what's on those big channels gets watched. And Iowa football is going to get watched. You're going to get views because you're on these big channels. So that's pretty cool.
Good news for the Big Ten, Tony, is that it's a credit to the Big Ten Network having only hit, I believe it's 10 to 15. I'm trying to think. I think it launched right around the time that Maryland and Rutgers were bought into the league, so about 10 years ago. that it is, I know it's very close, but still to be able to outrank the secondary Fox network and then also the ESPN secondary networks as just a 10-year-old network that focuses on one conference is pretty impressive.
It is. People watch the Big Ten Network, so people don't watch the Pac-12 network, but they do watch the Big Ten Network.
And Big Ten fans, I made this statement the other night. The only time all football season last year that the Big Ten Network or any of these networks, basically any of the networks that you see under the ESPN Disney umbrella or FS1 or fill in the blank, beat ESPN head to head was a Big Ten Network game involving Ohio State Rutgers, a 3:30 game that outranked an ESPN game head to head.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. So we did some, and some of you guys have heard me talk about this before. We did some really deep statistical analysis. I mean, like actual real professional statistical programming, not like Excel, of like actual statistics stuff of TV
like
data.
I would have done, Tony, right?
Exactly. You could do it. I can teach you. I'll send you my old notes from grad school. You'll be fine. They're pretty easy to just follow along. But one of the things that they found is that really that when you look at TV data and you're trying to predict TV viewers, that three things matter. First was, and again, I tested all sorts of variables and all that. And if somebody wanted to pay me, I could test a whole lot more. But without funding, we weren't going to do too much. But we did a lot of different variables. And I did a lot of this also working with Ryan, who runs the D1 360 channel on YouTube, who's awesome. And one of the things that we found was that the three things that really matter were one, group of channels. So like whether it's a network channel, and then there was ESPN in the middle, and then the cable channels. And so which of the three that it was the first sort of most, and that is the most important predictor, right? Because for every person who's like a diehard fan, you also have like, an Uncle Norm who like lost the remote and just is watching whatever's on ABC. And there's more Uncle Norms than there are, somebody who's worried about, well, I got to get the gambling, trifecta double parlay. There's 10 Uncle Norms for any one of those guys. And that's what really drives TV viewing. Stuart Mandel, Mark, did you see what he said about TV viewers today?
I did not.
So Stuart Mandel, kind of stinging to a lot of people, but really insightful, was talking about the change in the TV market. And he said, the thing is, people are talking about Oregon State and the problems they face. And he said, the problem is the TV market people aren't worried about, the Oregon State dad who wants to take his son to Reser Stadium and then they're going to come back and watch the Pac-12 game late at night. They're worried about the New York Giants fan in Queens or the Patriots fan in Southie who doesn't really know any college football players, but if Michigan's playing Ohio State, they'll watch the game on TV. And that's, or if USC is playing Nebraska, they'll watch the game on TV. And he said the problem is there are millions more of those just kind of casual random people than there are of all the fans of Washington State and Oregon State added together. And that was kind of stinging to folks, but it does sort of say something about where the money in the TV is going, because it's going to these hugely watched games. And the Big Ten is part of that. So Iowa is in good spots. So real quick, before I was going to check here, we've got what's her name? Was asking about overall national championships.
Yes, Barbara. Hopefully you're still here with us.
You have Barbara. You guys have 26 overall national championships, according to the NCAA records from a couple months ago. You may have won more since then. I don't always check like traffic or like cross country or basket weaving or whatever happens, but you've got 26. But again, pretty good. That's right in the middle of these elite blue bloods. You've got a couple here that are I don't know what 111, but to have 26 is pretty solid.
Yes, as you guessed a few minutes ago, Tony, wrestling.
20 wrestling?
Yeah.
And to Stephen Light, this is a really interesting thing. Stephen, you make a really interesting observation here. From New York City to Boston, college football fans are not great. So I did a whole study on this and what happened. And this is what really worries me about the West Coast right now, is that when teams lose relevance, fans disappear. So, for example, if Iowa decided to go to D3 tomorrow and join the Summit League or whatever, your fans would not be like, you know what? Let's cheer for the Cyclones. No, they would just kind of disappear after a little while. And that's what happened in the Northeast. So I'll give you an example. In 1950, the University of Pennsylvania, founding member of the Ivy League, would have 85,000 people at some of their big games. Usually average about 75,000. Their stadium, until Michigan expanded, they had the biggest stadium in the country. Notre Dame and Penn were the only two schools with their own TV contracts. And very much similar, with Harvard was the team of Boston, and Princeton was the team of New Jersey. It wasn't Rutgers, it was Princeton. Yale was the team of Connecticut. It wasn't UConn. And so as those schools decelerated their football back, those fans just kind of drifted. I mean, it wasn't instantaneous. It was, over time, they kind of drifted, but they didn't drift to another college team. They drifted to the NFL. And so that's something I really worry about with Washington State, for example. People love Wazoo. They have they're in the middle of nowhere, but they have a lot of fans in the Seattle area. If Wazoo goes irrelevant, those fans are going to be lost to college football. They're just going to kind of become NFL fans. So that worries me.
Yeah, Tony, I got to say from personal experience, my own anecdotal evidence of that, I grew up in Ohio, which I find to be a somewhat unique experience from a sports standpoint because professional sports are so heavy here with 2 Major League Baseball teams, 2 NFL teams. And but sandwiched right in the middle, you've got Ohio State. So Ohio State does not suffer from that enormous NFL and Major League Baseball fandom. It's arguably the most popular football team in the country, arguably. Then I went to Mississippi. I was there for 6 or 7 years, and then suddenly the professional sports void was just enormous.
Huge.
Like people were Atlanta Braves baseball fans, and my initial reaction was, "Why do you root for the Atlanta? They're 3 states away." Oh, that's
There's nobody else.
And like there were these old timers who rooted for the St. Louis Cardinals because that's who they could get on the radio for forever. And and I'm thinking St. Louis, you're like forever away from St. Louis, but it was all college. They were just avid college athletics fans and in football in particular. And then I go to ESPN and I go to Connecticut, which is about halfway between Boston and New York City. And I start rummaging around on sports radio and just the people I worked with. It was funny because ESPN is, of course, the king of college football, and especially at the point that I started there over 20 years ago in regards to broadcasting the games. But the people working on it, they got their Yankees hats on and their Red Sox hat, and their attachment to college football was just working on it. Otherwise. And I'd go to the all sports stations. The most popular sports show on radio at the time was Mike and the Mad Dog on WFAN, the largest sports radio station. Until it was mid-November, there was just, it had to be Notre Dame and Ohio State playing a 1 versus 2 matchup for them to mention anything about college football until like the last 2 weekends of the season. Rivalry weekend. Then they're just going to talk about like Ohio State and Michigan and Alabama and Auburn. And that's it. And yeah, it's just.
Well, and the wild thing about it, Mark, I mean, remember the Rose Bowl, the Rose Bowl stadium and its name the stadium is literally a copy of the Yale Bowl. Because the Yale Bowl was full. I mean, in New York City, you had Army winning national championships and Heismans and all that. Just up the Hudson, they'd play games at Yankee Stadium. You had, Princeton had a huge stadium. So, those teams and when they lost relevance, and now the difference is they lost relevance on purpose because they made a decision that said, we don't think we can be who we want to be as a school and win national championships.
Yeah.
And they had a very careful, just like kind of a plane with a throttle. They decided to pull back the throttle in 1952. They made the decision. They launched the new league. The Ivy League wasn't even a league. They launched in 54. And when that happened, they got rid of spring practice, did all kinds of stuff like that pulled back the throttle, and they let the world pass them by. What sucks for Washington State is they just got clubbed in the knee. And I worry a lot for them.
Have you ever seen any surveys, Tony, in regards to college football fans in New York City? I would just be curious.
Oh, I have the data. Yeah. Number one is Notre Dame.
Okay.
Number two is Penn State or Ohio State.
Okay.
I think they were 2 and 3. Michigan, I think, was 4. I mean, I've lived in New York for so long, in and out of there. So like, there's Michigan bars. Like, I go to with my friends from high school. We go to like the Michigan bar, and everybody's in maize and blue. There's a bunch of Ohio State bars. There's different bars but it's very much like the diaspora. Like, it's the sort of alumni thing. It's nothing like when you're watching, like when the Giants or the Jets are playing.
Yeah.
But then I didn't watch either one of them, so I was always bad about that. I did watch our Mets though. Go Mets. And Yankees. Yeah, Mike says lots of U of M bars in New York City. There are a lot. And all those schools have different bars. I will tell you guys something really funny. So I moved to DC from LA in 2002. So, in the middle of the season. And so like early in the season, it was Pete Carroll's second year. We lost to Kansas State. I think we lost to somebody else. And we had his quarterback who was kind of okay, named Carson Palmer. And then all of a sudden we started winning. So when I first moved to DC, like, I don't know, September or whatever, I went to like the USC bar, and there were like 15 of us or something watching this game, like the official USC alumni bar. But as the season went on in that year, as they stormed towards the Brad Banks Iowa Orange Bowl, there were 15, and then there were 30, and then there were like 80, and they kept having to move it to a different bar each time. And I actually was then moving to Germany the day after the Orange Bowl against Brad Banks. And there were like 500 people, and the school sent pom-poms, and it was crazy to watch that Orange Bowl game. So, whenever you are in a big city like that, and you're for a great school like Iowa or Michigan or something like that, there's always going to be a bar, and it's a lot of fun.
Very cool, Tony. We always appreciate these. It's always a learning experience. I hope you guys appreciate. I know that you do. And we will continue these deep dives.
It was fun. Go Hawkeyes.
Tony, we are going to pin you down for this television viewership breakdown.
Anytime.
We'll get that put together here.
That'd be fun. We'll compare it to week 1.
Yes. I would love to do that. Let's schedule that within a couple of weeks of week 1,
okay.
And then we'll take the numbers versus week 1 and see how we do.
See how we did. I like it. Fight on, everybody, and go Hawkeyes.
Tony, thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, folks, I'm going to stay on here for a few minutes because we do have this news that was delivered today in regards to Iowa State and Iowa. I just wanted to run through that. I'll answer any comments or questions concerning, and we can follow that together. So I'll just stay on for a few minutes, depending on your responses and depending on how much you want to get into this. So I know there's a lot to go through, and some of it involves Iowa State. We'll try to bypass as much of that as possible, focusing on the impact to the Hawkeyes. So we've got, as reported by Adam Rittenberg, ESPN senior writer today, 4 more Iowa State football players, 3 more members of the Iowa football program charged in the state's investigation into sports wagering, which alleges that several athletes placed bets on games in which they played. Yeah, that's the part that becomes extremely serious. According to criminal complaints filed Thursday in district courts for Story and Johnson counties. And let me pull this story up so you guys can read along here. So again, here we go. 4 players from Iowa State, 4 Iowa football players charged in the state's investigation into sports wagering, placing bets on games in which they played. If you like to lay down some money on some games, wow. I know it's against the rules, and it's also, depending on your age, illegal. But if you're going to do it, stick to the NBA, even if you're going to bet on college football. Of course, once we start to cross that line into games in which these players played, wow. Okay, according to criminal complaints filed Thursday, players face the charges of tampering with records and aggravated misdemeanor for concealing their identity in electronic wagering activities. This is getting deeper and deeper and worse and worse and worse. So, betting on games in which they played and then concealing their identity. The group includes Iowa State starting running back Jarrell Brock and 3 teammates with starting experience: offensive tackle Jake Remsburg, defensive tackle Isaiah Lee, and tight end Deshaun Hanukkah. Okay, now to the Iowa side. Wide receiver Jack Johnson, former Iowa players Arlen Bruce and Reggie Bracy, who transferred to Oklahoma State and Troy, respectively. Okay, let's stay on the Iowa path. Iowa had no comment on Johnson other than to say it continues to cooperate with the investigation. The charge carries a maximum sentence of up to 2 years in prison and a fine ranging from $855 to $8,500. According to the NCAA's updated guidelines on gambling, athletes who wager on their own sports or others at their school can face permanent loss of eligibility. So that makes sense too, that there's not just an added penalty for betting on your own sports, but also betting on other sports at the school because of the obvious connections there. Another group of Iowa State and Iowa athletes was charged earlier this month, including Iowa State starting quarterback Hunter Deckers. Okay, let's follow the Iowa track here. According to the affidavit obtained by ESPN, Brock made 1,327 online wagers totaling more than $12,000. So he's betting $8 or $9 per game under a DraftKings account associated with a non-athlete. Okay, yeah, he made the bets using somebody else's account. So who knows how they tracked this? If they went back to an IP address, I don't know. His wagers included 3 games in which he participated last season against Iowa, Kansas State, and Texas Tech. Made 13 wagers on Iowa State basketball games. Okay. Bruce and Bracy are alleged to have worked together in placing wagers while underage. The account was registered to Vincent Bruce, who's over 21. Bruce, who started at wide receiver in portions of the past 2 seasons, made 11 wagers on games he played in. He allegedly made 132 online wagers totaling more than $4,300. So he's spending about $40 per wager. According to the affidavit, Bruce bet the under points total in a 2022 game against Northwestern. And in the 2022 Music City Bowl against Kentucky. Okay, you're an offensive player betting the over, under. Bracy appeared in 14 games at Iowa, allegedly made 66 wagers totaling $715. That's about $12 per, while underage, including bets on games in which he played against Michigan and South Dakota State last season. The infamous 7-3 game. Troy has suspended Bracy. Lee, okay, he was at Iowa State. We'll bypass that. Hanukkah, an Iowa State player. Back to Johnson, accused of making wagers under his mother's DraftKings account, including 2 Iowa games in which he did not play. He allegedly made 380 wagers totaling more than $1,800. What's that, like $4 per wager? O'Brien is accused of making more than 350 wagers while underage using his mother's FanDuel account, including 3 on Iowa football games while he was on staff last season. There it is, folks. Just wanted to go through that. Don't know if anyone has comments and questions there in the section. Hair Trigger 83, Arlen Bruce betting on games in which he played, though. Damn. Yes. And I mentioned this to Tony before we went live about this. I wrestle with the whole idea of student athletes or athletes in general, professional athletes, being allowed to bet on sports, period. Because in a perfect world, for lack of a better term, or a ideal situation, those athletes would have the discipline to wager on sports that they don't participate in and then stay clean and stay away from participating otherwise. But the mere temptation of, if you allow and have accounts that are connected to sports gambling and they're legitimate accounts and they're your accounts and you are allowed by rule to bet on other sports, just the temptation, since you were engaged in that kind of activity, of crossing the line and betting on your own games. Or, I don't know what you feel about betting on other games within your sport, an Iowa player betting on the Michigan State game, for example. Again, if it was an ideal situation and people were able to stay within the lines and the boundaries, then as long as they're of age, then again, if you're trusting of people, which we can't be, unfortunately, then you would allow wagering across the board other than in their sport or certainly of their own games. So that's the situation. We're going to be talking football here very soon. So we're looking forward to that with all the NIL, with all the recruiting, with all the flips and commits, with all the transfer portal, and now with realignment going crazy all the time. We will actually talk football. We've got post-game shows all over the place. Of course, you guys are Iowa fans mostly, but for those of you who are fans of other teams, we've got post-game shows this season featuring Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Texas, Notre Dame, USC, Oregon, Miami, Clemson, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Alabama, Georgia. I think I hit them all. So tons of post-game. If you or anyone you know or know of would be capable of hosting post-game shows involving a particular team, please hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Also, keep under consideration, even if you're not a Big 12 fan, even if you're not an SEC fan, please subscribe to our SEC and Big 12 channels. We just launched those last week, and we need to rev them up in a hurry. We're going to have some changes to our channel structure, and we need your help. So we're going to have some really good content on our Big 12 channel and our SEC channel. So again, we would love to have all of you involved over there. And even if you don't follow SEC or Big 12 football, we need your participation, your help, your support. And then when we get to a solid subscription number, you can certainly end your subscription. But I'm going to go to the SEC channel. I'm going to drop the link here in our discussion right here. So here is the SEC channel link. Please subscribe. We already have about 10 videos posted. So thank you so much for your support. And again, I understand most people watching right now are not SEC fans, but please, if you enjoy what we do here at the Voice of College Football, whether that's for Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State, whomever you root for, understand that you are actually supporting the Iowa channel, the Ohio State channel, the Michigan channel, and everything we do here at the Voice of College Football, the overall effort here by subscribing to the SEC channel, by subscribing to the Big 12 channel. So all of it works together. All of it works together. We've got 70 Big 12 subscribers. We need 1,000. I'm extremely optimistic that we're going to get those by opening day. Yes, I said opening day. We've got 41,000 subs on the national channel to pull from. So I believe we can get to 1,000 subs in a couple weeks. So please subscribe. Again, you will be safe. Hold your nose, do whatever you need to do to get through the subscribing to an SEC or a Big 12 channel. You can unsubscribe when we get safely over 1,000. Pumpernickel, great question here. Yes, we will. Will you be doing call-in stuff on the SEC channel, or is that just for the main show? So here's the deal right now, is that we've got weekly live streams on the Oklahoma channel, West Virginia channel, Texas, Iowa, Nebraska, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Miami, Florida State, Clemson. Clemson going on as we speak over on the Clemson channel. Okay. Then we also do post-game for as many shows as we can. We just listed the teams that we are prepared to do post-game for. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. I know that pains you to do that, so I appreciate that. Daryl, we'll get to your question there. So, yeah, we're going to do call-in stuff all over the place. Yes, we will focus some SEC, but yes, we will. Yes, we will. All right, Daryl, Mark, I thought you already had an SEC channel. It looks like I'm going to have to post a video, which I really need to do anyway, I think Mark missed the joke. What was the joke there? Yeah, I didn't see a joke. Or maybe I just missed the joke because I have no sense of humor. Maybe that's what it was. So yeah, we just had our channel restructuring, so we are launching a new SEC channel. That's the bottom line. I'm not going to go through some long explanation. So that's the deal. So I actually may do that right now, even though I was in the process when our deep dive started here with Tony. I was in the process of restructuring or structuring the Big 12 into pods, divisions, and otherwise. So that video is going to be out here in the next hour over on the main channel, or as Tim calls it, the national channel. I actually like that better. I call it the main channel all the time. National channel. We're going to have a Big 12 structure that we've set up for the scheduling and otherwise. I also had this thought today. Everybody give me your feedback on this, and I know what I'm going to get. I'm going to get, yeah, go ahead and do it. LFG, glad to watch the SEC channel. Have they had content recently? Yes, we got videos on Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, Florida, Ole Miss, Auburn, LSU. Yes, there's about 10 videos over there. So this is what I was going to do. Let me know if you like this idea. This might be a hellacious live stream, so we may have to break it up. But I want to go through the entire 2023 season game by game. Now, we obviously can't spend much time on every game, but to predict every game. So with your help, we predict every game, and these won't be my official predictions, but this will just be fun. But there's one big catch, one big caveat to this that we'll see. Otherwise, we're just going to end the season with Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, and Alabama in the Final Four. It's going to be cut and dry. No. This is the caveat. We're going to go through the entire season. I'll throw up the schedule for week one. We'll make picks really quick. Boom, 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 boom. However, here's the catch. As many of you may remember, because I make the statement from time to time concerning odds and betting and point spreads, there are, like clockwork, 4 to 5 upsets in the top 25, not just the entire college football calendar or schedule for that particular week, just in the top 25 out of the 2023 games in the top 25, 4 or 5 are going to be upsets. It's almost like clockwork every week. Therefore, when we pick all the games every week through the college football schedule, we got to find 4 or 5 upsets. We're not moving on to the next week until we pick 4 or 5 upsets, and we'll keep the records. We'll get to it. Okay. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, the SEC channel, the Big 12 channel, the links are in the chat. Please subscribe to help us continue to grow and build. And I want to be doing this this time next year. That would be a whole lot of fun. Appreciate you being here. Our next show is West Virginia Live. Should be Friday night at 8 Eastern. And then I'll be on at some point live on Friday, TBD. Keep it live. Keep those notifications on to know when we go live. And you will find out very soon when you'll see me on Friday. Appreciate you and have a good night.